Welcome to Wayward Writers. I'm senior literary agent and author Heather Cashman.
I'm author and writing coach Stephanie Bearce.
And I'm author and writing coach Nicki Jacobsmeyer.
Our mission is to nurture and enrich established writers throughout their publishing journeys.
We welcome all genres, age groups, and publishing paths through video podcasts, online webinars, in-person retreats, and more.
We're here to help you conquer your path.
Hello, everyone. We're so grateful to have you here with us today. We are going to be talking to Vera Ray, a fantasy romance author at Storm Literary Agency. We're so grateful to have her at Storm. Welcome, Vera.
Hi, it's so nice to meet you and talk about publishing.
Yes.
Thank you. Stephanie, will you tell us more about Vera?
I would be happy to. Vera Ray writes fantasy romance that will transport readers to magical worlds. Her books feature strong, morally gray heroes and the clever, stubborn heroines they can't get enough of. The first book in the series, A Crown of Tears and Treason, reached the Amazon #1 bestseller rank in its respective category. When she's not complicating her characters' lives one plot twist at a time, Vera writes science and tech articles. She enjoys cooking, sewing her dream wardrobe, and being the most competitive player on game night. She loves to travel and always comes back with too many pictures and fresh ideas for her books. So
I love that. I'm super competitive too.
and I'm not, but but I like games.
Oh.
Vera, can you tell us a little bit about your journey to self-publishing and, well, just the whole journey?
Yes, it's been quite a journey. Last time I counted, I started seriously thinking about publishing my books about 12 years ago. So it's been a long time. And I came from traditional publishing into self-publishing. I had an amazing agent when I began publishing my books on Amazon. But as you all know, the publishing industry is very, very difficult and it can be insanely hard
Yeah.
to get a foothold in and to have that chance to publish what you want and something readers would connect with. So in April 2020, so like a month after the thing happened, I self-published my first book under a different pen name. And it was a book I absolutely loved and adored and thought it had so many chances. It had been in competitions and so on. And it did nothing. Nothing. I think I made my cover myself. So I didn't lose any money, but I didn't make any money. I know it's a bit gauche to talk about money, but I want to be 100%
We love
transparent.
talking about money.
Yes.
Okay. Because I remember when I was a baby writer and I didn't fully understand the financial aspect of writing. So I hope this is helpful to whoever's listening. I think I made like $50 on it before taxes. So everything I'm saying is before taxes. To this day, not in like the first month or lifelong. So in 4 years, I made like $50 on it. And then I had this idea I absolutely love because the thing that absolutely fascinates me about any book, any genre, is the dynamics between characters. And I'm sure you can relate to
Yes,
that.
absolutely.
And I thought, let's bring family dynamics into it. And I had this idea of two warring families, sort of Romeo and Juliet, with a lot of cousins on both sides and so on. And I started researching the market, and I initially wrote contemporary romance. I had this idea, and contemporary romance was booming right then. I was like, okay, I don't want another quote unquote failure on my hands. I love this idea. Let's do it. And that one did a little better, but not great. And I remember being so disappointed because, again, I absolutely love this idea. But I remember while writing it, this would work as a fantasy. this would make a great fantasy.
Mm,
Why are you writing it like this? And I kept saying, no, 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 because I'm really a major fan of fantasy, and I think it's the genre that most influenced me along with sci-fi. So whenever I get an idea, of course it's going into fantasy, or it always does. And I remember being so disappointed that it didn't work, and I was like, okay, we need more market research. And I kept that idea. I didn't finish the series because I left it in a decent place where it had an ending and so on, but I didn't finish it like I wanted to finish it, because that would have been like three more books. And it was absolutely heartbreaking for me that they weren't working. And I did more market research, and I thought, okay, which genres do I like? What are readers gravitating towards during this time? And then I went into sci-fi romance, and I had a modicum of success with my first series. Then I took a bit of break because of personal things, and I came back with another sci-fi series. And that one, again, didn't do anything.
oh,
Yes. And in December 2023, I just had a book come out in November. And for the entire month of December, I made $71 before taxes. And I was like, this is not it.
Oh,
I can't
yeah.
keep going like this. I also work full
Yeah.
time, and you know how much writing takes out of you, and marketing and so on. It's not sustainable in the long run. And I already, since end of 2022, I promised myself I'll revisit that story I love so much, with the character dynamics and the Romeo and Juliet families and so on and so forth. I promised. And I was already writing it when I had this epiphany in December 2023 that something was going wrong. And I thought, okay, here's what you're going to do. You're going to try one more time. One more time. This is taking a lot out of you. You've been at it for years. One more time. And if it doesn't work with this one, we'll think about it. We'll see what we're going to do going forward. But you can't lose hope right now. You love this series. Let's do
Yeah.
it. And 6 months later, I launched it. And in the second month of launch, it started doing
Good.
well. Then it started doing very well. Then I got my agent, the lovely. We had an auction
That's
for it.
awesome.
So when it finally clicked that this might actually happen, was at the end of June. The last month in June, I made exactly $71 for one day, the same I did for December. And it was like the universe was telling me, okay, you tried again, this is going to work, which was amazing for me personally. And shout out to my friends Alaya Wells and Kate Stevens, who also write romantasy and fantasy romance, and they were a great support for me during that time, because I was this close to quitting
mhm.
this after
That
years and years and years and years. This close.
Isn't that the way it happens? Like, it's always like you just never know when it's gonna happen. I think that's what drags us along and keeps us going, is that it could just be right over the next hill.
And I really admire your determination, because that's hard. It's I know. It's really hard. When you have stuff that's like, "Oh, I poured my heart and soul into this and it's not going anywhere." But so congratulations. I'm so happy for you. It's
Thank you very
Yeah,
wonderful.
much.
absolutely.
Thank you so much. And congratulations to you too. You know the feeling. You know how much it hurts, especially when we love
Yeah,
an idea and a
I
book.
know.
It's absolutely heartbreaking.
It is.
And sometimes we just have to keep pushing and do it
Yeah.
one way or
Yeah.
the other.
So you're still self-publishing the print and digital books, right? Yes.
Yes.
But then for your audio and your foreign rights, that's what you got an agent for. You got
Hmm.
Michelle.
Yes.
So what made you decide to get an agent after going this route?
There were two main reasons. First of all, I started getting messages from audio companies asking about the rights.
Mm,
And that got me thinking. And also, I had a really great experience with my first agent, even though we didn't sell traditionally. It was like we have all read those horror stories about writers and their agents. Mine wasn't. Mine was great. It just wasn't the right
Mhm.
fit. But I seriously considered whether I wanted an agent or not, not because of the agenting writer relationship, which I personally
Mhm.
love, but just having that experience with traditional publishing and the weight and the rejection and so on, I had to think whether I really wanted to jump straight back
Yeah.
into that. And I really thought about it, and I personally did not want to start to negotiate contracts, which I have never done in this capacity. And I thought that having an agent deal with all of it and maybe guide me when it came to contracts and so on was very, very important. And I personally think it's great if you have someone in your corner. So after 2 weeks of thinking about it, I was like, okay, I'm going to get an agent. And that was that.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
So, Vera, how did you choose a literary agent, and what advice would you give to other self published authors
Of
when
course.
looking for
For
an agent?
me, the most important thing, like, I think there are two main directions, and each one is equally as valid. For me, it's very important to have an agent who has the time for me, let's say, who I know I can trust, who doesn't have like 500 authors and has like their
Fun? Yes.
attention goes in 5 million different places, which again is super valid because you have those big, big, big agencies and a lot of people gravitate towards them, and I wish them the best of luck. That wasn't necessarily for me. I prefer agencies that feel, I don't know if this is the right word, but human.
Mhm.
You can see from their, like, how their social media posts are, how their writers talk about it, all of that. You can see like the human quality in that. I always gravitated more towards that than like huge, huge, huge agencies, which again do wonderful things. And if you're into that, good luck and the best for you. Things had changed a lot since I queried in 20s, and again I was just surprised by the waiting time, because in self-publishing, at least for me, everything moves
Yeah.
so fast. Like, I decide when this happens, this happens, this happens, so the wait was absolutely insane. And I was talking to my friends in a group, and I was like, oh, this is difficult. Once more here. And one of them told me, remember Michelle? And I was like, yes, Michelle, when I got my first agent back in 2016 or 2017, was the first person who I had an interview with as a baby, newly agented
Mhm.
author. I was like, yes, of course. And Michelle was such a huge part of the writing community on Twitter back when it was like sane. And I remembered her, and she always had this warmth and tried to help authors and writers, and I always respected her. And I was like, yes, of course. Well, do you know she became an agent? Oh, ooh, that changes things. And I queried Michelle. My friend actually posted on Twitter and asked, because we were talking about the changes in querying when we started versus now and so on. And she asked a question on Twitter about it. Michelle replied, and she was like, "Is the time to query Michelle?" So I queried Michelle, and it just moved really fast and really well from that point on. I was literally like floored with everything that happened from that moment on.
That's wonderful.
And I think it's really interesting what you said. You queried Michelle because there was a relationship that you were seeing her, and you started to learn how she was as a person. And that's all part of research, right? When we're looking for an agent. And I think sometimes people skip over that and they're like, oh, they take
Mhm.
what I write. And it's so much more than that. And I think it's evident that because you kind of knew her as a person and spoke to that, that there was that connection for you too, and you felt confident about that. So I think that's a huge testimony.
when you are going to conferences, when you are going to retreats, when you are on Twitter or you're on Blue Sky or wherever you are now, that you are interacting in a positive way, that you're putting your best self forward and showing that humanity, as Vera said. It's important. All those things, you never know in the future how they're going to impact you or what they're going to do for you. And not that we should do it for something in the future. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's important that we make these connections.
You give good, you get good.
Yeah.
Yes, I
Yeah.
Yeah, I would think that you probably all would agree. Just the time that I spent as a regional advisor with SCBWI, the question that always came up that authors would want to know with editors or agents was, what is one of the like most important qualities you look at for a client? And yes, you have to, the writing has to be there, right? But the characteristics always, I never heard anyone ever say anything else but kindness, because kindness at the end of the
Yeah,
day, this is tough. No matter what path you take, it is tough. And if you're not surrounded with kind people in these relationships you have, it starts
Yes.
to get so taxing, and that takes the joy away from what
Absolutely.
all of us are trying to do. So I
I
think that's
100%
wonderful.
agree. And I think in most cases, you can get a feel of how someone is online and like the small details.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can feel when they're trying to appear different. You, of course, can be wrong about it, but
Yeah.
in most cases, you absolutely can feel it and you see how others talk about them and how they relate to them. And
Mm-hmm.
to me, again, that's very important. Like you mentioned, kindness in author clients. I'm looking for the same
yeah,
thing in an agent. I think that's
Right.
so important. And I was really lucky to not find unkind people in this industry so far.
that's awesome. It's a good testimony to the people you're working with, and I'm sure they all appreciate that very
Yes.
much. So, right now, Michelle's handling your foreign rights with as an agent. Any
Yes.
other aspects that you might want to shift to an agent, or is that what are you thinking about for the future? Do you know?
Yes, I actually, like my ideas, I
Hmm.
baby them. And I had an idea for a series which I think would do best in traditional
Okay.
publishing. And in the future, hopefully, once my series really takes off to the point where I can give up my day
Hmm.
job, I can focus on my series, which is my baby, and then focus on the other baby for traditional publishing, which I would give to Michelle. So that's the
Hmm.
end goal. Hopefully, it happens in the next year or two.
That's exciting.
You said that you feel that this series, that your little darling that you're nurturing, it feels right, would
Mhm.
do best in traditional publishing. I often have this question, and I'm sure our listeners do too. How did you determine for yourself that you think this series would do better in traditional as
Yes.
opposed to indie?
So it's for me, it's all about market research, and you can see TikTok nowadays, the great TikTok. You can see it's really useful for
Yes.
trends, and you can see which genres people are gravitating towards. You can also see on Amazon what people are gravitating towards. There are a bunch of platforms you can check for this. And the idea that I have combines the Da Vinci Code with an Indiana Jones
Fun.
feel, globetrotter, jet setter, archaeology, and so on, which isn't something people necessarily gravitate towards nowadays. In my personal opinion, and I'm sure not all people think this way. It's easier to self publish when people are also interested in that particular genre. When it comes to traditional publishing, uh, you can take, let's say, more risks, at least from my perspective, which sounds kind of weird
Interesting.
because you have to go through an editor, and we all know how this entire process is. But if someone believes in that little nugget of an idea you have, it's much easier to convince an editor or a publishing firm that your idea has merit than convincing thousands of people online to give your book a chance. That's my perspective. So it depends on trends and what people are really gravitating towards and what catches their attention in a particular period. In 2 years, that might change. Now, as I stand here, I don't think that idea would do as well in self publishing as it could in traditional publishing. Things might change. We'll see.
Hmm.
I like the flexibility. That's always a good
Well, and
thing.
if your goal is to go traditional, why wouldn't you just have her sub anything she thought might sell? And then if it doesn't sell, then could you go the self publishing route with it?
Of course, absolutely. I did mention like giving it the best chance, but that's not the only
Hmm.
chance. It might be more difficult to get it to a specific point I'm envisioning for it in self-publishing, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. It's simply more difficult as I see it.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, it's always an option. We'll see what happens in the future. But I also, for me, I really, really, really love the flexibility of self-publishing. I would never ever give it up ever. I like it. It sounds strange because there's nothing comfortable about it, but it's my comfort zone. You live or you die on your own sword,
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
and being able to explore and try new things and decide, it vibes
Hmm.
with me. I love doing that part of it. It sucks when it doesn't work, but oof, it feels so good when it does.
It sucks when it doesn't work in traditional too, though. So it's
So, how do the financial arrangements work when selling foreign rights and audiobooks? And what should self published authors understand about royalties and advances and long term financial
Well, first
gains,
of all, I
do you
think
think?
any author needs to learn how to budget, because even if you get a six-figure advance, let's say the stars align and you get a lot of money, you need to consider the fact that you'll be getting that money for a very long number of
Mhm.
years. For example, for audiobooks, I sold my rights for 7 years. So that money you get as an advance is for
Yeah.
7 years if you don't receive
Mhm.
royalties afterwards. So learn how to budget. It's important. As far as payment strategy, I understand there are several ways of segmenting the advance. So you can get all of it when you sign, sometimes for an entire series. Then you have when you sign and then when you deliver. So it's two segments, and so on and so forth. I was lucky enough that we negotiated so that I would get the advance when I sign. And you, of course, have to pay the agent's commission, which is very well earned. And you can put in your contract for the publisher to send the agent or the agency their commission and to give you the rest of your money.
Yeah, and just to add to that, an agent can sell directly to foreign publishers, or they can use a sub agent or a co agent who will sell to other foreign publishers. So sometimes it'll only be the 15% like regular, but sometimes if they have to use a co agent, then they'll usually charge you 25% as commission. An agency will. So it just depends, and that's something you should be talking to the agent who's offering about. Most agencies have it pretty well set out in their contracts.
Yes, and it's like an industry standard for specific
Yeah, it should be standard. Some
commission.
some agencies, bigger agencies, will often charge more. So that's definitely something also to look into when you are having your agent calls or call to ask them how much do they charge for foreign rights, how much do they charge for film rights, and things like that. So Vera, how has your marketing strategy changed, or will it change, do you think, to accommodate different languages and cultures?
I'm in a particular situation because I am from Romania and most of my marketing is geared towards the States.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just about studying exactly what, again, people gravitate towards And I know this is very difficult when you don't speak a particular language, but it's not impossible. And you can always find out things that are okay and aren't okay when it comes to marketing and just communicating in general in a specific market. And again, it's all about research, honestly. Like when it comes to marketing, I'm no marketing guru, but it has helped me. And the number one thing I always say: research, research, research. You will find an answer or a solution if you put in the time.
Yeah. We're all about research here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've talked about it
Yeah.
several times.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
time part is what sometimes we have to remind ourselves to take it and to slow down, right? In the long run,
Mhm.
that's better. At least I know
Yeah.
I am having to be reminded.
Well,
Patience is a
It
virtue,
is, but
but
I'm the same. I'm not patient. It's difficult.
it is. But the research is
it is.
valuable,
It
and
is
I
hard.
applaud you for it. It takes time, but it's worth it. So, in your research
Mhm.
and all of your new adventures, what's the most valuable lesson that you have learned in expanding your book to foreign rights and audio markets? What do you think other authors should know?
I haven't expanded into foreign markets so far, so I don't have experience there. Maybe we'll do another podcast
Okay,
after I get experience
that'd
from
be
that.
great.
But yes, but on the
Hmm.
audio side, first of all, we're working with a great company, which I haven't worked with before, but the process is so much easier when it's efficient and everybody is on point and doing their job and replying to emails, and it's amazing. And it's opened up a whole new world for me because I'm not an audiobook reader. Audiobooks aren't a huge thing in Romania, so I had to listen to a lot of them to see the different
Hmm.
intonations, like whether readers prefer with more emotion or whatever the reader predilections are. So it's made me listen to a lot of audiobooks, which I
Good.
loved, and learning about a whole new side of this industry, which I hadn't had any contact with up until this point. And it's been a wonderful learning experience. And again, everything, any experience can be, at the end of the day, wonderful if you have the right people around you and supporting you and helping you and so on.
Yeah, that's great. And sounds like research again,
Mhm.
huh?
That's good.
Yes,
And
yes,
community.
Community,
And community.
community
yes,
and
Find
research.
your people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
That's all it boils down to, and creativity. So if we find another word for research that starts with C, we have CCC.
we'll make up a
Yes,
word. We'll make up our own word.
yes.
I like
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
that's
Oh, well, Farah, this has been awesome. Is there any last words of wisdom or advice you'd like to give our
Just
listeners?
I want them to not lose hope because this is a really hard
hmm
industry to break into and to be able to sustain yourself and to just keep going day in and day out. And I, for one, looking back at 12 years ago when I started, I didn't know the reality of it. And even though I was listening to, well, authors and reading articles and so on, I feel like the truth was sort of coated. It has changed. It has changed and people are more
hmm
open to it. And I think you need to know exactly what you're getting into before you do it, because it can be amazing and you can have the best feeling in the world when something turns out right, and not necessarily about
Right.
sales or so on. When you get a really
Yeah.
good review, you had an awful day and you just get a message on Instagram for a reader saying, I absolutely adored your book. It's made my whole week, and so on and so forth. It's such an amazing feeling that someone took the time out of their day to write something nice to you, a complete and utter stranger. It's honestly amazing, but you need to know exactly what you're getting yourself into. And please, please, please don't lose hope. I firmly 100% believe anybody can write. If you feel like you have a book or an idea or something inside of you, you can do it. But it does take work, and overnight success happens for very, very, very few people. If you're one of them, congratulations. But if you're not, you need to hold on to that motivation inside of you and know that at one point it's going to happen. Keep going. It's going to be okay.
One
Thank you so
good
much.
words, good advice for all of our listeners out there.
Hopefully.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Wayward Writers.
Let's connect. Find us at waywardwriters.com, X, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook.
See you next time. Conquer your path.